Candidate Forum. I am Lori Wathen, President of Oklahoma PTA, Oklahoma's largest and oldest child advocacy association. In fact, this year we are celebrating our 100th anniversary. Oklahoma PTA includes 23,000 parents, grandparents, family members, students, teachers, administrators, and business and community leaders devoted to the educational success of children and the promotion of parent involvement in schools. PTA's mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. Tonight, we fulfill that mission by introducing you to the candidates for Oklahoma Superintendent of Instruction and asking them your pre-submitted questions. We hope that you will leave this forum confident in your ability to choose a candidate and ready to vote in the primary on June 28th. Every day, Oklahoma PTA members advocate for children in schools, before local government, agencies like school boards and county commissions, the state legislature in Oklahoma City, and the federal government in Washington, D.C. Every Oklahoman can advocate for children by voting in every election. So thank you for your attendance this evening. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for moderating tonight's forum and thank each candidate for being here. I would like to expressly thank our VP of Advocacy, Tammy McCartney, and her advocacy committee for working so hard to plan this forum. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Mary Jane Lindeman of the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma, who will introduce you to the candidates and get this forum started. Thank you.
I had to unmute myself. Welcome to today's candidate forum, focusing on the Oklahoma Superintendent of Public Instruction election candidates. The candidates joining in the forum this evening are Dr. John Cox, Ms. April Grace, Ms. Jena Nelson, and Mr. Ryan Walters. The forum this evening is sponsored by the Oklahoma Parent-Teacher Association and will be moderated by the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma. My name is Mary Jane Lindeman. I am a member of the Board of Trustees of the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma and will serve as moderator for tonight's forum. Let me explain a little bit about the format for tonight's forum. We are using the League of Women Voter of Oklahoma's guidelines for forums. Filming and recording this forum is not allowed except by members of the media, the League of Women Voters, and the Oklahoma PTA. This event is being live streamed and will be available on the Oklahoma Parent Teachers Association Facebook page and website, and the Oklahoma League of Women Voters website for viewing on demand following the end of the forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening remarks, 2 minutes for a closing statement, and 1 minute to respond to each question. A timekeeper will be keeping track of the time, and the time will be displayed for the candidates with warnings at 15 seconds and another when time is out. The candidate's microphone will be muted if he or she exceeds the time limits. Questions have been submitted in advance by voters and screened for appropriateness. The screeners look for the following. Questions must be worded in a general manner so that all candidates can respond to them. Questions directed at one candidate only will not be asked. Questions need to be relevant for this particular office, the Superintendent of Public Instruction. Questions must not be yes or no questions. They must include some kind of an explanation. The screeners grouped the questions in categories of a similar nature and selected one that was representative of the similar questions. The purpose of this is to sort out duplicate questions, assure topics of greatest interest are asked within the time available, and put personal questions aside. The opening statements will be in alphabetical order based on the last name. Does anybody have any questions? about the forum guidelines? Okay, great. Let's start with the opening statements. During the opening statements, we encourage candidates to introduce themselves and share information about their experience and their positions. John Cox will be the first to offer opening remarks, followed by April Grace, Jena Nelson, and Ryan Walters. The order will reverse for the closing statements. Okay, so we'll let John Cox begin.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. John Cox, and first of all, I would like to thank the Oklahoma PTA and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. This election is so important to the future of our children. I've been a public educator for 36 years. 8 of those years, I taught math, computer science, and coached athletics. For the last 28 years, I've been a superintendent principal at Peggs Public School. I've been so blessed to be part of this rural community for about half my life and play a small role in the success of others. I've been blessed to serve on various statewide boards representing most of the school districts across Oklahoma. Why am I running for state superintendent? This is best answered by faith, family, and future. Being an educator is a calling. It takes a servant's heart. Through my faith, I'm at that time in my life where my experience and training have converged to effectively lead our state and take care of our children. I am following God's plan. Family is so important. What can we do to improve family lives? We can provide the best opportunity for children to become anything they want to be. It's also personal to me. What kind of public school system will we have for my grandchildren, for my 2-year-old grandson, for your children and your grandchildren? The future, I want the best education system possible so that our children and grandchildren can have every opportunity to be successful and prosper. Faith, family, and future. I hope you see tonight that I have the experience, training, and certifications and leadership ability to lead our state into the future and improve our educational system for the best. Experience has to matter. Thanks for taking the time to watch the forum and also your interest in public education. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from April Grace.
Hi, good evening. My name is April Grace, and I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters tonight, and as well as the Oklahoma PTA Association and all of you who joined us tonight. So a little bit about me. I have been an educator for 33 years, and I've served sort of a balanced career. I feel like 13 years in a classroom, 6 years in building level leadership, 8 years as an assistant superintendent, and 6 years as a superintendent. I've served in 4 different communities, and really for me, it's about faith and family as well. Those are really important values to me. And I feel like looking forward into our state, I want to make sure that when I look at my 4-year-old granddaughter, that Oklahoma's educational future is brighter even than it has been in the past. I think we have a tremendous foundation available to us already in Oklahoma to build upon, and we are ready and set in motion to put Oklahoma education on a new trajectory. I believe my experiences and the variety of communities and places I've served and the work I've done over the last 33 years positions me uniquely to be able to lead our state forward into that trajectory. And I look forward to serving. For me, this is not about position or title or accolades. I've had those things in my career. And for me, this is about serving Oklahoma families and students and communities all across our state. And that's why I want to do this job. And I think it's extremely important, as it's already been mentioned, when we look at the future of our state for workforce development, for economic development, and for a thriving and educated populace and citizenship for Oklahomans. And so I just ask you tonight to consider voting for me as you listen to all of us tonight as we answer these questions. Thank you.
And now Jena Nelson.
Good evening. I want to also thank the PTA and our League of Women Voters for having all of us here tonight. My name is Jena Nelson, and I am a proud 16-year educator. I have taught all across Oklahoma. I have also taught in other states across this great country as well. And so I am bringing a wealth of experience as an educator, but I've also served in the corporate world. I've even ran my own business. I also have a very unique background as being the 2020 Oklahoma Teacher of the Year, where I have worked alongside teachers and superintendents and students and parents all across the state. And I've also worked with policymakers both within the state and on the national level. This year, I was also named as one of 45 educators to be selected for the National Award for Teaching Excellence Award, which I'll be receiving soon. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I care about the teachers. I care about our students, and I care about our families in Oklahoma. And right now, I feel like we are at a critical point in education in our state. And I want to lift up those voices. And I want to reimagine what education can be in this state so that we can make sure that our education system matches these 21st century kids for a 21st century job and workforce out there. So I'm hoping that all of you will take the time to get to know me better and also go and do all of your research. And I'm so grateful to be here tonight. So thank you for the opportunity.
And finally, Ryan Walters.
Good evening. Well, thank you, first of all, for everyone putting this together and giving us the opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves so voters can make an informed decision. My name is Ryan Walters. My background is since I was 14, I wanted to be a public school teacher. So I went on to be a history teacher, and the model of the teacher that was most influential to me. I spent 8 years at McAllister, being a public school history teacher there in my hometown. I then started a nonprofit that worked in education reform in Oklahoma City. And so we had a statewide impact working with teachers and community leaders and parents across the state. And then the governor appointed me to be a Secretary of Education. So I've served in that role for the last 2 years. And, what I've seen is, our education outcomes are 49th in the country. That's not good enough for our kids. Our kids deserve better. Our parents want better for their kids. Our teachers want the resources available so that they can be successful. They want us to be a leader in education. We all want this, but in order to do this, we've got to advocate for changes in the way that we do things to ensure that parents are in the driver's seat of their kids' education. We don't have any kind of liberal indoctrination in our schools. We don't have any far left agenda being forced onto our teachers and forced into our schools, and that we ensure that every student has all possibilities at success. Pathways look different for success for every kid. And I think that we need a champion for our kids in order to make sure that every kid has the possibility to be successful. I'm running because as a father of 4, that's what I want for my kids. I hope that they all have the best education system possible. And I want that for all 700,000 Oklahoma students. So happy to have the conversation tonight and excited for the opportunity to let voters know a little bit more about all of us.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you. Now we'll begin the question and answer section. We will rotate who gives their response first. Since Mr. Cox opened with the introductory statements, the first question will be answered by Ms. Grace, followed by Mr. Nelson, and then Mr. Walters, and then finally Dr. Cox. So just as a reminder, you have 1 minute for the answers to your questions. And the first question is, when was the last time you worked in a public school and in what capacity? April?
All right. Well, I'm currently working in a public school. And so I'm still doing that currently. I'm serving as superintendent. And again, I've worked in every capacity, 13 years in the classroom, 6 years in building level leadership, 8 years as an assistant superintendent, and then currently still a superintendent. So I'm still actively engaged in public education on a daily basis, working with families and communities, board members, state level leaders, legislators, all these folks right here on the call, work with them from time to time, and many of the folks probably viewing tonight. So I'm still active in the work of public education on a daily basis.
Okay, Jena?
Hi. Yes, I am currently still working as a school teacher. I am a 7th and 8th grade academic enhancement teacher. And so what that is basically is that I have designed a curriculum and a program for all of our tier 3 students. So students that are are struggling either with behavior or academics. I've come up with a 3-tiered system for all of them. I also serve on many committees, not only just in the state of Oklahoma, but across the country, where I also work on designing curriculum for various programs. I serve on policy committees, and I feel that every single day that I'm working with kids is very, very important. And I'm also reaching out and working with families as well. So, you know, I'm obviously very, very close to still being in the classroom, but also on the outside working with various boards across the country.
Okay, Mr. Walters.
And we are all doing really good at staying inside our time. So yeah, no, you know, one of my requirements on when I was being considered to be the Secretary of Education for the governor is I wanted to continue teaching in some capacity. So I've always stayed teaching in a public school since that appointment. So I still teach a class at McAllister Public Schools. And every day in my role as Secretary of Education, I work with public school teachers from around the state, superintendents from around the state, every day, parents of public school kids every day. So my network that I work with is statewide. I work with all those stakeholders in order to advocate for the best type of education system possible for all of our students. So get to work in a lot of different schools and get to see a lot of different perspectives as we try to take in all perspectives in order to advocate for policies that are best for all Oklahoma students.
Okay, Dr. Cox.
Yes, this is an easy question for me because this is my 36th year being in public education. And I said earlier, I taught my first 8 years and have been a superintendent principal for the past 28. And currently I'm teaching at Mid-America Christian University Public School Finance, which I think is very important to know that as the job of a state superintendent. And I also have taught all the other classes that are required by law to be a superintendent or principal. I take a lot of pride that I'm in the trenches of public education, that I have a pure understanding of the difficulties and concerns that we as educators and parents have. I live the mandates that are passed down from the legislature and the federal government right here at my desk, and the regulations also that come from the State Department of Ed that has pushed on us the last few years. By currently working in public education, I understand the pressure and mandates that are pushed upon our schools. Is that it?
Mary, you're still
Yeah,
muted.
sorry. That was 1 minute, right?
Yeah, it dinged, but I wasn't sure about that.
Apparently we got a ding.
Okay.
So that'll be your warning. If you can, if there's a way to show them a warning, if you can just raise your hand, Crystal, if you could raise it so that gives them a heads up that there's about 15 seconds left.
Yeah.
That way you can kind of catch their attention. Okay. All right. We'll go on to the next question. You'll have another chance to talk about some of that at the very end. All right. So the next question, and we'll start with Ms. Nelson, is how would you describe an excellent school district? What resources and conditions do you feel lead to successful schools?
Thank you so much. So first of all, we need to see fully funded public education schools across the state. I also want to see a school that has certified teachers, that every single kid has exactly what they need to be successful, and that they can see themselves in their teachers as well. I want to make sure that all of our teachers are focused on the job of teaching and not extraneous mandates from here, there, and everywhere, where they can actually get back to the job of teaching. I want to see communities involved in the schools so that we can see that everything that's going on in the public school, that community is there, they're thriving, and they are working together to make sure that their students are successful, that their teachers are supported, and that their communities are growing. So for me, that's what I would want to see in a successful community school and public school.
And Mr. Walters.
Yeah, for me, when you look at a school that's successful, it's a school that has parents very involved in the education process. It's very transparent with what they're doing and has a very open door policy to parents so that parents are very engaged in their students' education. Also, a successful school looks like a school that supports their teachers. I hear from teachers all over the state every day that don't feel supported in their schools. We've got to make sure that we're doing all that we can to prepare teachers to enter into the classroom to be successful and also support them once they're there. And so when you look at schools that are successful, they've got a great school leader that set a culture for the school of academic success. Kids have multiple pathways to success. Kids have great relationships with those teachers. The teachers are supported in what they do and are given the resources to be successful. And parents are involved. Parents are engaged. Parents feel a part of the process. This is the secret success to what makes excellent schools.
Okay, and then we have Mr. Cox, right?
Yes. So I believe an excellent school district is a school that meets the individual needs of its students. It is one that combines an atmosphere that is conducive to learning and provides for a family environment. An excellent school is one where the parents are directly involved in the education of their child, and the parent and teacher have a strong relationship where their goal is student learning. It is important to say that an excellent school is a school that uses a team approach where an administrator, teacher, staff, and parent are all working together to optimize the child's education. A parent's voice is so important to the success of the school and their child's education. And we need to foster this relationship as early as possible and provide resources to support the parents working with their child. It is important to emphasize that the home to school partnership is so important to student success. Providing a family environment at school that is safe and secure, where everyone is working together, is a characteristic of an excellent school.
All right, and last will be Miss Grace.
All right, thank you for that question. I think an excellent school is one that meets the unique needs of every single learner and really creates a system that allows for academic growth and progress. So whether it's our learner that's struggling or whether it's our high-end learner and everything in between, it's that opportunity to access that education and all the supports that are needed so that a student can find that academic progress. At the same time, we have to do that in partnership with parents and in the community as well. And so, but we also want to make sure that every single educator also has the opportunity for growth as well, that they are supported, whether it's their first year of teaching or their 15th year of teaching, that they feel supported along in the process as well. That means we have to have resources and opportunity for training as we walk alongside folks. And so again, I think it's that whole picture of meeting the unique needs of learners, unique needs of adults, and then looking at how we respond best to a community as well and working with parents.
Okay, thanks very much. Third question. What is your plan for retaining experienced teachers and recruiting new educators? What new and innovative ideas do you have for addressing the teacher shortage beyond pay raises? And we'll start this question with Mr. Walters.
Yes, great question. And that's where the governor and I have been championing this new bill that hopefully we get across the finish line this week, but to give teachers a pathway to a teaching certificate that allows them to be a master lead or expert teacher in their district and give them a pathway to making significant more money and stay in the classroom. They can make up to 6 figures on this pathway. And to the question, it's not just about money, it's about giving them the opportunity to be a leader in their school in the sense of having the time to mentor, having the time to co-teach. And this is part of where we've got it wrong in the past. We've set up things for master teachers or mentoring, but we didn't give teachers the time to do it. Teachers' days are full. They're working from bell to bell. And what we've got to do is we've got to give them a pathway to make significantly more money and stay in the classroom. This will draw folks to the profession, but it will give those teachers who are doing a great job that financial incentive to stay, but then it will give them the time and the flexibility to have that huge impact on the teachers around them.
Okay. Dr. Cox.
Yes, I know at least 15 years ago, I would have a stack of resumes on my desk and right around between 75 and 100. But currently, right now, I have 2 resumes sitting here. There was a time when our teachers were respected and valued, and I just think we have to return back to that time. As an 18-year-old deciding on going to college for 4 years, and then at 22 years old making $40,000, and also looking at 40 years later being able to retire, I just don't think that's very enticing for a young person deciding to teach. I would advocate for a rule of 90 or being 56 years old for retirement, and move our beginning year paid salary to 50,000. And I know it was said, don't talk about the 50,000, but I just think, a teacher needs to see that they can come into that. This should be an incentive for our young people to enter the profession and also retain those experienced teachers. With the statistic of losing 3,500 teachers this year and only have 1,200 graduates to take their place, we're going to have a massive public relations campaign to recruit teachers. And as state superintendent, I will work with our districts to promote teaching careers and put value on the profession of teaching.
All right, Ms. Grace.
Sure. I think this is a multifaceted aspect that we really have to look at. We've got to find ways to incentivize our teachers who have already been in the profession for 5, 10, 15 years. We've got to incentivize those folks staying in the profession, but at the same time, we have to create multiple pathways and on-ramps into the profession. But I also think we've got to find ways to incentivize those coming through teacher preparation programs. So I think we have to look at many, many aspects. We need to continue to find ways to help our paraprofessionals get degrees and be certified. So I think there are a lot of pieces to this. I agree we've got to have a massive marketing campaign. And I've already been working with a company to sort of look at ways that we can create a really unique program to do high recruiting for Oklahoma, like is done across the nation at times. And so I think we have a great opportunity, but we've got to restore respect to the profession, as well as we've got to make sure that we have multiple opportunities for people to enter and then be incentivized along the way.
Okay. And finally, Ms. Nelson.
Thank you so much. This is something that I'm very passionate about. I already work on committees not only in Oklahoma, but in also Louisiana and with the other state teachers of the year across the country. And we are working on programs that we can retain and sustain our teacher corps. The first thing that I would actually start with is to make sure that every high school in our state has a teacher cadet program so that we can grow our own, so that we can show them that how amazing our profession is and how important it actually is. And then again, working with our college interns across the state to incentivize them by giving them pathways and scholarships, and then ways that then they can grow and become better teachers. And then for our teachers that are already in there at the State Department, we've got to take things off of their plate. If it is not absolutely necessary, we need to support them and give them what they need to succeed and to stay in that classroom.
Okay. Next question, we will begin with Dr. Cox. And the next question is, if elected, what do you bring to this position that will support school districts from the bottom up, not the top down?
Sure. My leadership style is to work with people, not over people. So this is very important to having a servant's heart in providing the necessary support or tools that our schools need. Our teachers need to be valued and respected again, and the state superintendent plays a huge role in supporting our teachers and helping provide the funding and training that our teachers are requesting for their classrooms. This is a great time to put emphasis on the importance of our support staff. Without support positions, we would not be able to operate our schools. There needs to be a discussion concerning funding that will help pay our custodians, cooks, our bus drivers, teacher assistants, pairs, aides, office personnel, a wage that can help them pay their bills and pay for essentials. What I bring to this position is a lifetime in education, bringing people together for the common good and making possibilities for students to have a future success. At some point, experience has to matter. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Grace?
Sorry, timer there. So one of the things I think we really have to continue to do when we look at from the bottom up approach is, again, we have to support all the adults in the system as well. So whether it's the paraprofessionals, the bus drivers, everyone, making sure they also have opportunities to continue to grow and learn and get better at the work they do. Teachers as well. Most teachers want to continue to grow in the profession as well. So those are some things we definitely have to do. One of the things I have a high interest in is restructuring the department in a way that then allows for that ongoing support, especially in our small rural districts where they need a lot more of that ongoing face-to-face support sometimes. And some of our larger districts have many folks in different positions to do some things, but our rural districts need some of that on the ground support. So I think you have to do a multifaceted approach here as well. And you have to provide training, support, resources. You have to do that by working alongside of people closest to the problem and where they are. And so I think there are a lot of ways for us to do that, but it's got to include everybody in the system, whether it's the support personnel, the administrators, or the teachers as well.
Ms. Nelson.
Thank you. I think I bring a very unique perspective because not only was I the teacher of the year during the pandemic and spent a lot of time on the road talking to teachers and students and parents about what the issues are, because education has changed. We need to go ahead and address that. We are not going back to February of 2020. We have to address the changes that are happening. And then I came back to the classroom and I have seen the things that are going on in our classrooms right now and the things that we have to address as educators, as principals, as administrators, because those things right now are very, very important to the future of what Oklahoma education is going to look like. We have got to start having collaborative conversations to talk about where we are moving towards, because we cannot go back. The things that we did in the past are not going to work. And we're going to have to get innovative, and we're going to have to do more collaborative, not only with our families, but with our community members as well.
Okay, Mr. Walters.
Right. You know, I think the State Department of Ed is just a bureaucratic mess right now. I don't think it's been doing a good job of helping anybody. I don't think it's been doing a good job of helping schools, helping teachers, helping parents. That's why I was proud to stand with Governor Stitt to call for the first audit of the State Department of Education. We have got a record high education budget. We've increased the education budget 5 of the last 6 years. When I talk to teachers around the state, they're not seeing that in their classroom. So we want to make sure the money is getting where it needs to go. These are taxpayer dollars. We need to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we need to ensure these dollars are being spent to improve our kids' education. And frankly, I have not seen that from the State Department of Ed. So we need to have a department that will ensure that resources are getting to teachers, that money is getting to the classroom, so that those supports are there, and so that every teacher in the state of Oklahoma, when they come into our classrooms and agree to teach our kids, they have the supports necessary, whether that's professional development or actual resources in the classroom. And that needs to be done for our teachers, because that's what the best thing that we can do with the department for our kids.
Okay. Thank you. The next question. According to the Education Data Initiative, in 2022, Oklahoma ranks 46th in the nation in per pupil spending for K through 12 public schools. Do you feel this is adequate? And if yes, please explain your answer. And if no, how does this impact schools and how can it be changed? And we will start with Ms. Grace.
Well, I think that, you know, we have increased education budgets, but some of that has been targeted specific to teacher pay raises and support pay raises and all of that. So, but I was thinking we actually ranked 49th in funding. And so I think part of what we've got to focus on is these per pupil expenditure dollars, because that's what gets into the classroom. That's what helps with the resources that are needed for teachers as well. And so I think that we have, you know, funding that barely meets the need, but I do think if we want to continue to be innovative, if we really want to push the trajectory and get to top 10 status or above, which I think we have the ability to do, then we have to look seriously at per pupil funding. But we need to be specific and strategic and targeted about the investments that are made in education. And so we can't just throw a whole bunch of money and then cut for 10 years and then throw a bunch of money and then cut for 10 years. So it needs to be systemic, it needs to be ongoing, specific, and it needs to be incremental. And so I don't know that we have the adequate funding to do what we really want to do to become top 10.
Okay, Ms. Nelson.
Thank you so much. I am a proud product of rural public schools. I'm down in McCurtain County, Broken Bow, and Luke Flatta schools. And I really believe that access should not equal success. And so we need to make sure that we can be competitive, that our children can be competitive with Texas or any other state that's around. And we should already know that investing in our children, investing in our public schools, that is the greatest investment that anyone can make. That's what it is. It's an investment. And the payoff is when they actually become, great members of our community, and they're reinvesting into our job course, because we already know if you have a great education system, you're going to have a great economy. If you want a great economy, you have to have a great education system. And that means fully investing in public schools.
Hey, Mr. Walters.
Right. So we've increased the education budget 5 of the last 6 years. We have $2 billion in federal aid also flowing into our schools, and we need to continue investing in public education. And I'm going to continue to work with the legislature to do that. But it's not just about money. It's making sure the money is getting where it needs to go. This is why this audit of the State Department is so important, to make sure that money is getting to our teachers, that it's getting to our classrooms, that it's being spent wisely, that the State Department of Education is spending it wisely, but also that every district is spending it wisely. I hear this from teachers from all over the state, that again, as we continue to invest, our taxpayers need to know that this money is being utilized in an efficient way to support our teachers and being used for our kids, to make sure that our kids have every opportunity of success. We have to be very transparent with how these dollars are being spent, and we need to make sure that there is accountability for taxpayer dollars so that we can see how this money is being spent from the top down. So yeah, that's important, but we also have to make sure that there's full transparency and that these dollars are being spent wisely.
Hey, Dr. Cox.
I believe we made great strides in funding our schools in just the past few years. I'm proud that the legislature is considering increasing funds to our schools this year. 4 years ago, we were talking about $400 million that we needed to adequately fund our schools. Today, because of the increase in state aid, I believe we are about $200 million away from fully funding our schools. That's kind of where I'm at. This is a moving target, though, because of increased cost. When you calculate the increased teacher pay steps each year, along with increased health insurance cost, increased cost of school supplies, office and janitorial due to inflation, and basically all the cost of running a school has increased this past year. Again, we're fortunate we have been able to use some of the CARES funds that help us with these costs. I would like to see funds that are not earmarked so that we can use them for support staff raises and classroom supplies, and additional funds to increase teacher pay. And if possible, use additional funds to employ more teachers.
Okay. The next question, we will begin with Ms. Nelson. What do you see as the top 2 roles of the Superintendent of Public Instruction?
Thank you so much. Obviously, guiding policy for our education in our state is very, very important. Being able to work with policymakers, both sides, to make sure that our schools are fully funded, but also listening to those educators and then elevating and celebrating every single one of them. Because we already know that if we want our schools to stay open, we've got to make sure that we've got great teachers in that building. And right now, that is my number 1 concern, is teacher flight. We are headed for critical mass right now, and we have got to do something right now to sustain and retain those educators in the classroom, because our kids need them. We're not going to have a system unless we have our teachers in the classroom. So working with those policymakers and making sure that our teachers have everything that they need to be successful, that's what we need to be focused on.
Okay. Mr. Walters.
So the state superintendent needs to oversee the Department of Education and make sure that that money is getting where it needs to be spent, making sure that the department is actually helping schools be successful. Again, I talked to school leaders from all over the state. Again, this is an entity that is not helpful. It's clunky, overly bureaucratic. So that needs to be a department that's actually helping improve student outcomes. And then, yeah, the state superintendent needs to be someone that's out advocating for the best educational policy for all Oklahoma students. Every Oklahoma student needs all the options of success. All of our schools need to be successful options for our kids. Teachers need to be supported, and parents need information. Parents need choices and where they send their kids to school. They need choices inside the school that they choose. They need to be able to see how their school is performing. They need to be able to see how money is being spent inside their school. So the state superintendent needs to be advocating for every single Oklahoma student and being a champion for their success.
Hey, Dr. Cox.
Yes, I believe one of the roles for the state superintendent is actually to serve our school districts. I understand that the State Department of Ed must monitor regulations, but we need to be a service agency and provide and promote tools that can help our schools and students be successful. We need to help provide resources, but also make sure our schools are following the law and meeting the needs of our students. Local control is a big issue for me, and we need to eliminate as much government overreach that we can. The other role of the state superintendent is to be a good steward of taxpayer monies. Over $3.2 billion of taxpayer funds comes through that office every year. That is why it is so important to elect me into this position due to my experience as a superintendent with public school finance and other state and federal funds. We cannot risk allowing someone with no experience, training, or certifications to be the state superintendent. At some point, experience and training has to matter.
I'm waiting for the bell. Okay, Ms. Grace.
Well, one of the main roles of the state superintendent, there are a lot of roles for the state superintendent, but obviously advocating for the 700,000 public school students and the 540 school districts as you work alongside of them to support those students is a critical role, whether that's through policy or making sure the funds are spent adequately and distributing those to schools. And, of course, we know it provides oversight and accountability as well, but the really important role here is about advocacy, and it's advocating for public schools across our state, which is what the role is about. It's about the superintendent of public instruction. And so you're to advocate for those 700,000 students, their families and communities, and the 42,000 certified educators that work in those classrooms, and making sure that all those things work together seamlessly so that we can continue to prove the academic outcomes for students across our state. All of those things work together. So it's hard to really tease out and separate this role into little individual specialized pieces because it's such a big role, but the main role is really advocacy for all.
Okay, thank you. Next question, and this one we will begin with, hang on a minute, Mr. Walters. How will you ensure that Oklahoma schools are producing students who are ready for college or the workforce?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, this is where I think we've got to get away from a one-size-fits-all model on our kids. One of my, most, successful students that I had was a student that apologized to me before he graduated because he wasn't going to go to college. And I asked him what he was going to do. And he said, I want to become a welder. That's what I want to do. And I found this company that would pay me to get my training. This young man is now traveling the world as an underwater welder, making great money, loves his job. But you know what? He's apologizing to me because at the time he felt like everything was saying you have to go to college to be successful. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that we're giving all options to our kids and we're exploring the talents of our young people at an early age. 7th, 8th, 9th grade, we need to be having conversations and opening up opportunities for young people to figure out what they're good at and to figure out what that pathway is. Maybe it is college. Maybe it's an internship or an externship in a local business. Maybe it's career tech. Whatever that may be, we need to make sure that every student can find what their path is for success in life.
Okay, Dr. Cox.
Yes, workforce development is something I'm passionate about and something I've actually talked about for the last several years. As we know, 75% of our students will not go to or finish college. My goal is to focus on this group of students and help our schools and technology centers have the flexibility to offer trade certifications upon graduation from high school. Many of our students love the trades areas such as auto body, plumbing, electrical, cosmetology, welding. There's just so much out there for them. We just have to help our schools provide innovative ways to help these students get training and certified before graduating high school. I love our concurrent enrollment system. Allowing our students to finish their freshman year in college while in high school is so important for future success in earning a degree. Some of our students are earning an associate's degree at the same time as earning a high school diploma. Just how great is that for their success? These are the two initiatives as state superintendent that I will be very passionate about.
Ms. Grace.
Yeah, so I think we definitely have to begin with looking at career pathways for students and those robust internship and apprenticeship opportunities within the high school system. So we have to begin to let students experience this early on, and we have a little bit of a foundation with that with ICAP, and we've got to make sure that every student is being able to explore that as a sophomore, a junior, a senior. We've got to continue early high school college options with starting students as early as sophomores into those college credits for to take place for both high school and college credit, looking at those concurrent systems. We've got to make sure that every student has an access to that. So in some ways, we can put some of the trades back into our schools, some of the woodworking, some of those things. So we've got a huge shortage facing us with workforce development across our state, whether it's plumbing and HVAC, et cetera. But those students have to start those internships early. Part of our seat time requirements that are in law provide a bit of a constraint. We're going to have to work on those. So those are a couple of the things I think would be important.
Ms. Nelson.
Yes, I'm very passionate about this. Actually, when I was helping a lot of my high school students with getting career ready, we helped them earn over $4 million in scholarships. And then a lot of our kids went straight to the workforce because of the career and readiness pathways that I helped create during that particular time in high school. But also as a person who works with the individual career and academic plan systems, the ICAP system in all the schools, you know, we've helped develop programs where even in middle school, they are working and focusing on finding what they're interested in, and then developing that career readiness into the curriculum, whether it be learning how to write resumes or learning how to fill out job applications. And then we've got to make sure that our internships for high school are ready to go, and that by their junior and senior years, they are paired up with people so they can see every opportunity that's available to them.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question, and we will begin with Dr. Cox. How do you intend to work with school boards and administrators to ensure success for our students? If not included in your answer, name 2 things you would do differently than what is currently being done.
Yes, I believe networking and communication is the key to ensure success of our students. This is one of the skill sets that I have. While focusing on local control, we must also have a shared vision of helping our students to be successful. Administrators want to be linked together and rely on each other to provide the best environment for a school. This is how I survived 28 years as a superintendent, by asking questions of other superintendents and learning best practices. Communications with the State Department has to be revised, and there needs to be a focus on providing customer service. All administrators are asking for is a quick and consistent answer. The same goes for our local school boards. They want to make sure that they have timely and consistent information to help formulate policy for the school. There needs to be a mutually shared trust and respect between the state superintendent, administrators, and school boards. This is one of my skill sets to make this happen. And this is why experience with creating networks and communication is so important to the state superintendent.
Okay, Ms. Grace.
Well, I think it's really important that we continue to recognize the local control of locally elected officials. And so as state superintendent, of course, you're going to build those relationships with folks, and you're going to have to make sure you reach out to them, especially if you see there's an issue, reaching out, having conversation, perhaps going on site, having face-to-face meetings if necessary, and visiting with people at the lowest level. Most issues need to be solved at the very lowest level and in that local community and within that local public school. So we've got to make sure that we have those things intact and secure. But one thing we really have to do is continue to build the relationships and continue to have advisory groups and meet with folks. And so school boards play a really important role in their local community, which with providing sort of that oversight and governance aspect to local leaders. And so as state superintendent, what you want to do is support those things, but at the same time, you want to build that relationship. So if there is an issue, you can have some authentic conversation.
Okay, Ms. Nelson.
Well, I believe the first thing that we all have to do is slow down and listen to each other and have conversations, lower the tone on rhetoric, and listen to what's actually going on. We're not going to pipe any kind of fear or anything like that that's going to divide us. We need to actually come together. And so having those open conversations, having committees where parents can come and talk to you, where students can come and talk to you, and then obviously going and visiting those schools and bringing the State Department there to say, how can we help you? How can we be of service? Because that's what the State Department should be. It should be servant led. And so I think that's very important because we all have the same goal. We all want the best for kids. And so when we all work together, when we take that time to listen and have those conversations, we can actually accomplish a lot of things. But that's not going to happen without open hearts and open minds.
Mr. Walters.
You know, I'm going to take the same approach I've taken as a teacher and as a parent. I'm going to do what I think is best for kids, period. I'm going to treat every kid as an individual with unique talents that God created in them, that they're all unique individuals. And I want to make sure that every single child has an opportunity of success. So that is my number one goal as state superintendent. How you do that is you work with the parents to help develop what that pathway looks like for their child. And you support those teachers to make sure that they have the ability to get those kids in the right frame of mind academically and support for what their academic path looks like. And again, so yeah, there's a lot of work with your local school boards, there's work with your local superintendents, but that approach has been missing. And again, that's why our education outcomes are so poor, is because we haven't had a state leader who's actually been focused on the needs of the individual student. Parents are frustrated. They want better for their kids. All parents want better for their kids. I want my kids to have it better than what I've had it. And in order for us to do that, we've got to take the approach to put the students in the center of every conversation and truly ask ourselves, what's best for kids?
Okay. Let's see, I think we got it ready. Okay, next question. And we will start with Ms. Grace. How do you feel about school consolidation and its effects on rural communities?
Well, I think there are two C words that nobody ever really wants to talk about, and that's cancer and consolidation. And so consolidation, if we talk about consolidating school districts, we really are talking about creating impact in our rural communities that could potentially close some of our towns. And so it can be a crippling effect. What I think when most people want to know when they talk about consolidation is how do we consolidate some of the administrative costs and how do we consolidate some of those shared pieces maybe between districts. And there are times when perhaps that makes sense. And we do have some programs in place across the state to incentivize that. And perhaps we had to look at that more. But when I'm talking to folks across the state, what they really want to know when it comes to consolidation is how do we get rid of some of the extra costs that maybe school districts have individually when we're talking about our rural school communities. So most folks really don't want to close those rural schools. They really want to share cost. And so I think that's what we've got to look heavily to, because consolidation can mean closing towns.
Ms. Nelson.
Well, being from a very small rural town, the first thing I always think about is transportation and making sure that our kids spend more time in the classroom than they do on a bus. But, everyone talks about how, essential public schools are to our rural communities, but no one really spends a lot of time talking about how, our public schools are actually helping revitalize these communities. So I'm absolutely against consolidation, because what we ought to be doing is that investing more in those public schools and growing our rural communities, making them the hubs. Because I can tell you, as someone who is from a rural school, Friday night lights are important to us. Our harvest carnivals are important to us. Our communities are important to us, and they all center around what is going on at that school. And so, yes, we need to look at some of the costs, but the cost of closing down those rural schools is too much.
Okay, Mr. Walters.
I mean, when you talk about consolidation, I don't like the thought of, Oklahoma City telling what school districts should exist and what shouldn't exist. What I think is important is making sure that parents have options for their kids and they get to choose the school of which they send their child to. And so as long as that's able to happen, again, I come from a rural part of the state. Again, there's some great schools in rural Oklahoma. And when I talk to communities in rural Oklahoma, they think that their schools a lot of times work really closely with their communities, and they like that. They like the size of their schools. So what we should be doing, what the State Department should have been doing a long time ago, is helping those schools find efficiencies on a way to spend their money. Yeah, we need to get more money in the classroom is what we need to do. And so we can consolidate services, we can utilize sharing of services, we can help make that so much more efficient. But every child, no matter where they choose to go to school, should have access to a high quality education. So that means options of schools, but that also means options inside the school. And so we've got to make sure that all of our rural schools have that ability. And again, the State Department's done a poor job of providing that for schools across the state. And that's something that we need to do a better job of.
Dr. Cox.
Yes, school consolidation is a topic that we've discussed for several years. And as president of the Oklahoma Rural Elementary Schools, it's really our tenet to oppose any forced consolidation. So I've been fighting consolidation for 20-something years. And so typically when people say we have too many schools, my response is that I look to see if the school is efficient with our taxpayer funds and proficient academically. Those two things. Schools are the lifeblood of our communities. If you kill the school, you kill the community. Most of our state is considered rural, and our rural way of life is really important to Oklahomans. It's really important to me. Studies have shown that there would be very little savings, if at all, if we consolidated school districts. As I said earlier, local control and less government are important. If you consolidate schools, you take away local control of that community. And if the school is placed in a bigger school, we're creating more layers of government. I can see the from our larger Oklahoma cities where they may not understand our rural way of life. But if we are doing due diligence with taxpayers' monies and we're educating students to have successful lives, that should be the goal of our schools.
Okay, I checked the clock and it had stopped, so I went ahead and let you finish that sentence. I wasn't sure what the time was. All right, I do want to say before we start our closing statements that Mr. William Crozier was invited to attend the forum tonight, and he was unable to join us. So just wanted to let you know that he had been invited. The closing remarks will be 2 minutes each. We will start with Mr. Walters, and I will remind you, this is your time to wrap up. And if there were some things that the questions didn't cover that you want to say, this is your opportunity to make those statements. So we'll start with Mr. Walters.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for moderating tonight. You've done a great job giving us all the opportunity to share our thoughts here. And in closing, thank you all to everyone listening. The thing that's, I think, so hopeful about education is there's so many people that are so engaged. They want our education system to be better for our kids. They want it to be better for our teachers. They want Oklahoma to be a leader in education. When I look at other things, I see us lead in OU football. I see these exceptional programs in athletics. I want to see us be exceptional in academics. I think we absolutely can do it. I think that we have to look at making sure that we've got options for parents to choose from. We got to make sure that parents are in the driver's seat of their kids' education. We have to make sure that there's none of this far left radical nonsense in our schools, that focus needs to be on academics. And we need to make sure that our teachers are supportive. We've got some great teachers around the state. They need to be supportive so they'll stay in the profession. And we've got to recruit high quality individuals to continue to come to our schools and teach. Our parents want better for their kids. We need to continue to engage them in what we're doing in our schools. And we need to have an unapologetic attitude that we're going to be a leader in education, not for the ranking, but because what that means for our kids, because it means that every kid will have a better opportunity of success than other kids around the country. And that's what I want for all Oklahoma students. I want every Oklahoma student to have as much of an opportunity of success than any other kid in the country. And if we do that, we will be a leader in every different category of our state if we can put our kids first and make sure that every kid has an opportunity of success.
Okay, Ms. Nelson.
I want to thank every single person who is watching us tonight. I want to thank, of course, the PTA and the League of Women Voters. Thank you for having all of us here tonight. I believe that public education saves lives. That's why I'm here tonight. I know because it saved mine. I would not be here before you if it was not for a very gifted teacher from the state of Oklahoma. And so I want to make sure that every single kid has the same opportunity that I had, the chance to overcome overwhelming odds and to go into whatever they're interested in, to succeed and find success wherever that means for them. But I also want to make sure that our teachers feel supported, that they feel that their voice is being heard. They've had a tremendously difficult time the last couple of years, and I know that a lot of them are losing hope. And so that's what I want to bring to all of them. I want to bring them a sense of hope because they are bringing hope to 700,000 public school children every single day. Our administrators across the state have been working tirelessly over the last few years to try to keep everything going. And so it is time for us now to move past the pandemic and into a new future. And that means new ideas. And that means working with people all across the state to make sure that we have the most competitive school systems out there, but not competition against each other, but finding that they can stand up to Texas schools and that they can look and have a sense of pride knowing that they are a part of the Oklahoma education system, because that is the reason we're all here. And we've got to make sure that everyone has a voice at the table. I have a lot of experience when it comes to educating. I have a lot of experience when it comes to listening and a lot of experience when it comes to working. So I hope that you'll give me the chance.
Thank you. Ms. Grace.
Well, thanks for having us tonight, and thanks to all of you for listening in. And you know, I think all of us here probably have a great passion for education, or we wouldn't be here. And we're all about serving the students of Oklahoma. I do think it's time that we've got to reimagine, redesign, and redefine Oklahoma education. What do we really want from Oklahoma academic outcomes as we look at this and take a deep dive into it as a state? I think we have a lot of work to do, but I think we're positioned for greatness. And I don't know any other state that has educators that are more committed to serving students across the state. We have 60% of the students in this state that live at or below poverty. So we have tremendous needs that must be met in Oklahoma education. But what I believe is that we are positioned and we are ready, and folks are ready to do it and go to that next level. I think we've got to make sure that we really look intensely for our high school students. And we can't just be enough to have a high school diploma anymore. We really have to have our students positioned and ready for either military service or a career trade, and whether, no matter what that looks like, certification areas, whether it's HVAC and plumbing, whether it's woodworking, and no matter if it's aviation. There are multiple avenues for success for every Oklahoma student, and we are positioned to do that. We've also got to make sure that we're meeting academic rigor. We have some of the best academic standards, some of the most rigorous in the nation. They have been risen in the last few years. We've made those more tough for kids, but the rigor has come up. So now it's time for our Oklahoma academic outcomes to match that. And I believe our educators are ready for that challenge. And so I'm asking that you consider voting for me on June 28th. And I look forward to serving alongside each and every one of you. And thanks for being here tonight.
Dr. Cox, sorry.
Well, thank you again. Thank you for having us on here. And thank you so much for those that are out there watching. It really means a lot to know that people really care about public education and where we're going to go. I'll end this by how I started, with faith, family, and future. it seems so simple, but when you start looking at each one of those, it really based down on what are we going to do to make the best life for our kids someday? What kind of future are we going to give them? And so that's our challenge. That's why I'm in it, because I see my little grandson and my little granddaughter on the way, and I see our kids here at PEGS and all through the state, that we just need to jump in there and really help improve our schools, give it resources, support our teachers again, really put them back on the pedestal where they belong. And so my heart is in it just for the children. What can we do for them? There are some specific things I'd love to do. And one of those is change our testing system, the assessment system, then go to a growth model. So we'll quit doing all this end of the year test prep and lose all this instruction time, where we can put value back in the month of April, where we can teach through there and through May, so that we can end the year and really get our kids ahead and try to bridge the gap of what we've been through. That's just one initiative. The trades is another that we talked about that I just really love. And then doing something with this A through F system that means nothing to the state, the businesses, the communities. Those have been initiatives I've talked to for 8 years. But really, what do you want? What do you want as a state superintendent? What qualifications? We have to get back where that person has training, where they have experience. And I bring all that to the table. And I'm just asking you for your vote on June the 28th. And I'm going to work really hard for you. I'm going to work with you and lead for you. And we're going to get this. And so thank you again. And just remember, experience matters. Go to cox4ok.com. And if you need to call me, my phone number is right there. And I would love to have that conversation. So thanks again.
Okay. Thank you very much, John Cox, April Grace, Jena Nelson, Ryan Walters. We very much appreciate your time and your interest and your dedication to the schools of Oklahoma. We are indeed blessed to have such remarkable candidates for this position. So thank you very much. I have a few reminders for all of you who are about to vote coming up here in just a couple of months. The primary election will be on Tuesday, June the 28th. The deadline to register to vote is for the June 28th election is Friday, June the 3rd. The deadline to submit an absentee ballot request form is the close of business at your county election board on Monday, June 13th. The absentee ballot request application can be completed online on the OK Voter portal or in person at your local election board. The request form can also be printed from the Oklahoma Voter portal, filled out and mailed in. And the Oklahoma Voter portal, by the way, is a wonderful asset for this state. The election board has done a great job with this, and it is made possible by the Oklahoma State Election Board. Early voting for the June 28th election will be Thursday, June 23rd and Friday, June 24th from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Saturday, June 25th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Please check with your local election board about locations for early voting. Election day voting is only available at your precinct polling place, and it will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Your polling place location can be found on your voter ID card or by accessing the Oklahoma Voter portal. Be sure and check with the Oklahoma Voter portal for information about all aspects of voting. If you request an absentee ballot, please follow the instructions you receive with your ballot packet very carefully. And if your completed ballot is going to be mailed in, please affix 2 stamps to ensure delivery. Be sure to take your voter ID card issued by the Oklahoma State Election Board with you on polling on election day, or an unexpired government issued photo ID, which can be an Oklahoma driver's license, an Oklahoma ID, a real ID, a military ID, a tribal ID, or your passport. If you have no form of identification with you at the time you go to vote in person, the Oklahoma law requires that you be allowed to fill out a provisional ballot. If you are registered as an independent, you are allowed to vote in the Democratic Party primary, but you must request the ballot from the poll worker. In addition, I encourage you to check out the League of Women Voters vote411.org. You can view your personalized ballot online by entering your name and address. All candidates who appear on the June 28th primary ballot have been invited to participate in the Vote 411 mechanism. And they've been invited to participate and answer some specific questions relevant to the office that they're running for. The answers are not edited for grammar, spelling, or content by the league, and it's a useful tool for learning more about the candidates that will be on your ballot. Again, thank you very, very much for attending the forum this evening, for taking your time to learn more about these candidates. Be on the lookout. The League of Women Voters is always putting together forums during this election season, so we'll likely have more in the near future. And now I'm going to turn it over for final comments to Tammy McCartney.
Oklahoma PTA's logo includes the motto, "Every child, one voice." I believe voting for candidates who share our values is the most powerful way to make that voice heard. I hope you will leave tonight's forum with an idea of which candidate will best support Oklahoma's children and a plan to vote in the June 28th election. If you'd like to learn more about Oklahoma PTA's mission and advocacy, or would like to become a member, please visit our website at okpta.org. Have a good night and see you at the polls.